What began as a routine Senate hearing on voting rights swiftly escalated into one of the most riveting political showdowns of the decade. The chamber, typically marked by formality and predictability, was already simmering with tension when Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett took her seat, her mere presence signaling a shift in tone and stakes. Young, poised, and unafraid, Crockett embodied a new voice in an institution long dominated by tradition. Dressed in a crisp navy blazer, she radiated quiet authority as she prepared to defend the constitutional rights of her constituents. Across from her sat Senator Lindsey Graham, a seasoned conservative eager to reclaim relevance through confrontation. His clenched papers and reddening face revealed his mood before he even spoke. The moment he did, it was clear civility wouldn't guide his approach. With sarcasm and derision, he dismissed Crockett's stance on democracy, but she responded with calm, invoking the 15th Amendment and asserting her point with clarity that cut through the noise. When Graham attempted to belittle her with references to seniority and legal tenure, she replied with surgical precision, reminding him that constitutional truths are timeless. Crockett's steady composure made Graham's bluster look hollow, and as his volume rose and frustration grew, the contrast between their styles became glaring. This wasn't just a policy dispute. It was a generational collision between the politics of intimidation and a new ethos built on precision, poise, and unshakable resolve. And it was only the beginning. What unfolded in the Senate chamber was far more than a fiery exchange between two politicians. It became a vivid, live-action metaphor for the generational and ideological rift defining American politics today. Senator Lindsey Graham, a 68-year-old Republican rooted in hierarchy and tradition, came armed with the old playbook: deference to seniority, projection of power through volume, and a dismissive view of younger progressives as unruly and naive. Facing him was Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, just 33, a former civil rights attorney and public defender who brought courtroom discipline and hard evidence to a space often dominated by theatrics. Their clash was symbolic. Graham's increasingly strained defense of election integrity collapsed under Crockett's data-driven retorts, including her unflinching citation that only 31 cases of fraud had been found among over 59 million votes. But Crockett's power didn't lie solely in her facts. It lay in her ethos, a new generation's refusal to equate volume with truth, seniority with wisdom, or bluster with strength. When Graham turned personal, accusing her of undermining democracy and playing the victim, Crockett responded with surgical control, cross-examining him with the calm precision of a prosecutor. She forced him to confront his own words, stripping away the pretense of political debate and revealing a raw attempt at intimidation. As Graham unraveled, pacing, shouting, flustered under the lights, Crockett remained still, composed, and devastatingly effective. She didn't need to raise her voice to win the moment. She just needed to make clear that the old rules no longer applied, and that the future of American democracy might just belong to those who, like her, are unafraid to confront power not with noise, but with clarity, courage, and conviction. While Senator Lindsey Graham thundered, finger pointed and voice cracking under the strain of his own fury, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett remained the picture of control, a calm eye in a political hurricane. She sat with hands folded, posture steady, and expression unreadable, her stillness making his rage appear even more unhinged. To everyone watching, in the chamber and across the internet, the contrast felt cinematic. And then, just as Graham collapsed into his chair, red-faced and breathless, silence swept the room like a wave. Crockett took a measured sip of water, adjusted her microphone, and met his gaze with the unflinching calm of someone in total command. "Are you finished, Senator?" she asked, not with sarcasm or volume, but with precision so sharp it echoed louder than any shout. That moment, clipped and replayed across every platform, was rhetorical checkmate whispered with grace. When Graham gave a terse nod, Crockett simply replied, "Good." Because now it's my turn. From there, she seized full control of the hearing. Her voice was clear, steady, and surgical as she dismantled his claims with data and redirected the conversation from spectacle to substance. She corrected his inaccuracies without mockery and reminded the room why she was there. Not for drama, but to defend democratic integrity. "You said I'm loud, Senator Graham," she said evenly. "But I haven't raised my voice once during this entire exchange. You, on the other hand, I think the record speaks for itself." Reporters typed furiously. Phones lit up. Senators sat frozen. Then came the numbers, undeniable and devastating. In the 2020 election, over 59 million votes were cast. Do you know how many cases of proven fraud were documented? 31. That's a fraud rate of 0.00019%. The silence in the chamber was deafening. And when Graham tried to interject, she cut through him with clarity. "That's 31 cases of fraud, Senator, versus millions of Americans who now face new obstacles to voting. So I have to ask, how is preventing millions from voting an appropriate response to 31 cases of fraud?" He had no answer. She pressed on, delivering a generational verdict. "We don't believe volume equals validity. We don't believe seniority equals superiority. And we don't believe intimidation equals intelligence." The tide had turned. This was no longer just a debate. It was a dismantling. While Graham scrambled and deflected, Crockett brought receipts. South Carolina's restrictive ID laws, wait times in black communities, his record of opposing voting reforms, and his silence on the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. Then, the knockout. "Can you name even one voting rights protection you've supported in 28 years that would make it easier for Americans to vote?" He couldn't. He didn't. And the silence that followed roared louder than any of his outbursts. Within minutes of the hearing's close, the explosive confrontation between Senator Lindsey Graham and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett burst beyond Capitol Hill and ignited across the digital landscape. Mobile phone social media lit up, not with outrage at Graham's stance, but with awe at Crockett's composed, fact-driven dismantling of his argument. The breakout clip? A split screen that spoke volumes. Graham red-faced, shouting, finger-wagging. Crockett calm, sipping water, asking with quiet finality, "Are you finished, Senator?" The moment became political gold. TikTok creators set Crockett's cool to classical symphonies while overlaying Graham's fury with screaming metal riffs. One viral edit showcasing her rebuttal crossed 2 million views within a single day. On Twitter, #CrockettClapsBack trended for 48 hours. "She didn't raise her voice. She raised the standard," one user wrote. Newspaper mainstream media quickly joined the chorus. CNN ran segments titled "Crockett's Calm Crushes Chaos," while MSNBC's Rachel Maddow praised her restraint. When Graham brought emotion, she brought facts. When he got personal, she got constitutional. Even conservative pundits took note. Fox News contributor Brit Hume admitted, "Graham looked like he was having a breakdown." Whatever you think of her politics, Crockett handled it like a professional. Then came a rare moment of political crossover. Barack Obama tweeted the clip, writing, "This is the kind of thoughtful, fact-based discourse our democracy needs more of." In a matter of hours, Jasmine Crockett transformed from a rising name to a national symbol of measured resistance and rhetorical strength. But for Senator Graham, the fallout was immediate and brutal. What he likely assumed would be another combative hearing turned into a public relations crisis. He was trending, but not for the reasons he hoped. Chart-decreasing cable news plastered the contrast. Graham pacing like an outraged guest on a cable talk show, while Crockett remained still and unshaken. He tried to salvage the moment with Fox News. "I don't apologize for being passionate about protecting our elections." But passion wasn't what people saw. What they saw was panic, and Crockett's calm made it starker. A half-hearted attempt at contrition on conservative radio. "Maybe I got a little heated. did little to stem the tide. Memes kept coming. Headlines kept rolling. Even Tucker Carlson, no fan of Crockett's politics, conceded. He got outmaneuvered. She made him look unprepared. Inside the Senate, murmurs turned to murmurs of concern. One GOP senator, speaking anonymously, said bluntly, "She ate his lunch." He looked like an angry old man. She looked like the adult in the room. Chart decreasing back home in South Carolina, Graham's approval ratings dipped slightly. Not catastrophic, but enough to raise eyebrows. Worst of all, his attempts to reframe the encounter only amplified it. Every quote, every interview, every post added fuel to a fire that was no longer his to control. He had entered the hearing intending to dominate through force. Instead, he handed his opponent a national stage. And the country had already decided who owned the moment. If Senator Lindsey Graham's performance was a meltdown, then Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett's was nothing short of a political breakthrough. And what followed wasn't just a viral moment, but a transformation. Chart increasing in the days after the hearing, Crockett's national profile skyrocketed. Her inbox flooded with interview requests. Invitations rolled in from town halls, civil rights panels, and leadership summits across the country. Political influencers crowned her the prosecutor who prosecuted the Senate. She didn't seek the spotlight. She earned it with clarity, composure, and command. Police Scarlight Democratic fundraising groups moved fast, turning her most striking lines into campaign gold. Her calm assertion, asterisk, "I didn't come here to be disrespectful. I came here to do my job," asterisk, was printed on posters, t-shirts, and coffee mugs. Clips of the exchange appeared in ads promoting voting rights legislation and Gen Z civic engagement campaigns. Ballot box with ballot betting markets began speculating. Was a Senate run in her future? Could this be the first spark of a presidential trajectory? Microphone yet through it all, Crockett stayed grounded. In an interview with the Washington Post, she said, "I didn't go looking for a confrontation. I came prepared to talk about voting rights. But when someone tries to intimidate you, you have two choices: back down or stand your ground." She chose the second, and the country took notice. Globe showing America's academia responded too. Harvard's Kennedy School added the hearing to its political strategy curriculum. Georgetown analyzed her as a case study in rhetorical power. Law schools taught her cross-examination as a masterclass in constitutional framing under pressure. But this wasn't just about argumentation, it was about what she represented. A new generation of leadership. A black woman standing firm in a space not built for her. A steady voice of logic in an age addicted to volume. Crockett didn't interrupt, insult, or grandstand. She listened, she responded, and she dismantled. Brain the moment reset expectations. For decades, dominance in politics meant talking louder, longer, and over others, especially if you had seniority. But Crockett offered a new paradigm. Facts over fury. Poise over panic. Preparation over performance. Woman judge medium dark skin tone, she became a blueprint, especially for women, people of color, and young leaders navigating adversarial spaces. As Representative Stacey Plaskett put it at a Democratic women's leadership event, "You don't have to shout to be heard. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stay calm. Stick to the facts, and let your opponent defeat themselves." Books in universities across the country, the hearing became required viewing. In political science classes, it was a case study in power dynamics. In law schools, it was proof that courtroom discipline belongs in Congress. In communications programs, it became a model of verbal economy and nonverbal command. Studio microphone, even across partisan lines, voices took notice. Tucker Carlson, hardly a Crockett ally, admitted, "When you're yelling and your opponent is calmly citing constitutional law, you've already lost the argument." Repeat button, but beyond headlines and remixes, something deeper shifted. Young voters saw themselves reflected in a leader who didn't trade authenticity for acceptability. Women saw control without aggression, and Americans exhausted by the tribal noise saw something rare: leadership without ego. Crockett didn't just win the moment. She challenged the system to evolve. She raised the bar not by shouting over it, but by walking calmly under it with her head high. And Graham? He didn't just lose an argument. He became the cautionary tale. A man undone not by scandal, but by a refusal to adapt. Out-argued, outclassed, and outpaced by the future standing right in front of him. Endero the verdict. In the viral age, volume gets clicks, but clarity earns respect. Jasmine Crockett didn't just land a political blow. She redefined what power looks like. Smarter, quieter, sharper. And in doing so, she didn't just challenge the old guard. She lit the path forward.